Good evening. I'm Sophie Redfern and I'm delighted to welcome you here to the Claw Studio at the Royal Opera House for this evening's Insights, supported by Rolex. Tonight we're exploring Vincenzo Bellini's bel canto masterpiece, I Puritani, which returns to Covent Garden after nearly 35 years. Set during the English Civil War, I Puritani tells the story of Elvira, a Puritan maiden who falls in love with Arturo, a royalist. Though her father initially opposes the match, he eventually agrees to the union. So far, so good, until their wedding day, when the couple's faith is tested. Opening on the main stage on the 30th of June, this new production for the Royal Opera is directed by Richard Jones and conducted by Riccardo Frizza. It stars Lisette Oropesa as the devoted Elvira and Francesco de Mura as her courageous lover. This evening, we're joined by members of the cast and creative team to explore the themes and music of what would prove to be Bellini's final opera. But first, to help me set the scene, please welcome Ken Querns Langley.
Hello.
Hello, thank you, Ken, for joining me. Now, you're with us this evening to chat all things Bellini and bel canto. Now, we tend to use the term bel canto as a sort of shorthand for the style of operatic writing and style of singing we find in early 19th century Italian operas by the likes of Rossini, Bellini, and Donizetti. But I'm hoping you can tell us a bit more about what the term means and how we should understand it.
Sure. So we typically do think of bel canto as that period between 1810, 1840, but reducing it to a period is a bit difficult because it causes some confusion. We talk about bel canto in many different ways, and so what I would like for you to take away from today is to think about bel canto as a performance culture or a performance philosophy. And that philosophy includes, yes, the period. It includes the compositional style of Rossini, Bellini, and Donizetti, which is typically voice-led and voice-centric melody. But it also includes the vocal technique that we use to produce those tones. It includes the pedagogy that we use to teach the singers to do those things. And so when we think of bel canto, we cannot reduce it to a set of dates or a couple of people, because realistically, it began with Monteverdi and is still here today. And the guiding principles of this performance culture essentially comes down to beauty of tone and flexibility of emotional communication, flexibility of expression.
This beautiful singing idea, you know,
Yes,
that's kind of
absolutely.
all centered on that. Now, you are a bel canto specialist, and I know you work with students teaching this. What in particular is it that makes singing bel canto then, and how perhaps might we see it as different from technique later in the 19th century?
Well, bel canto is quite unique in a few different ways. There are the elements which we'd normally think of in music. Legato, portamento, rallentandi rubati, all of these different things. But what I believe is quite important about bel canto and unique, that did change towards the mid to late 19th century, is that all of these elements that are in the service of those two driving forces of beautiful tone and flexible expression are in service also of effective communication and description of emotion. So rather than the immediate release of emotion or the representation of emotion in the immediate moment, bel canto describes the reality. It describes what is happening. It's a bit like a painting or sculpture. You're going to recognize that the painter is describing an emotional moment. And so singers employ, or deploy, as it would be, all of these individual elements in the service of those forces to describe emotion. That changed towards the mid to late 19th century with the more orchestral-driven music of Verdi and Wagner. The colorations changed, and the music became much more emotion-driven as a primary goal. And so those goals of beauty of tone and flexibility of expression gave way to brute force, but animal emotionality.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really useful context of framing that. Now, as was very typical actually of his day, Bellini was writing with specific singers in mind. So all of the roles, the kind of primary quartet that really star in I Puritani were for specific singers, and they were the greatest of their day. We're talking about 1835, it premiered. Now, the role of Arturo in particular I want to talk to you about, because this was for the celebrated Italian tenor Giovanni Battista Rubini, and is famously very, very high in register. Now, as someone who researches high tenor technique, was Rubini unique in that ability, or was there simply a difference in how tenors approached this then?
Well, I think I would be remiss to say that Rubini was not unique in some way. He was quite popular, very highly paid, and a very, very good singer. Bellini wrote Arturo for him. I believe it was also Sonnambula was written for him. Maybe in Pirata. But Donizetti wrote the role of Percy in Anna Bolena for him, and it was so high that it was never published in the original keys, and is still a bit high. But he was not, however, unique in his ability to perform such feats. So operas were being performed throughout Italy, throughout France. So high tenors were the norm. They were able to perform these operas in both metropolitan houses and provincial houses, probably not as well as with Rubini could, but they were there. And so the technique must have been somewhat ubiquitous. The ability for them to sing these high notes in fioritura had to have been there. And so what we end up with is, well, what happened? And the reality is two things happened. As I had mentioned, the aesthetic changed. So in the mid-19th century, opera no longer needed them to do it. At the same time, with this orchestral-driven music, everything became heavier, the voices became darker, the institution of the depressed or fixed low larynx that facilitated that darker sound and the louder singing precluded the ability to do those things. And if you combine that with the fact that they didn't need to do it anyway, it was essentially forgotten. We did not, however, lose the ability. So that left a gap, let's say, in the market. And when historians were looking back, there was through the lens of the late 19th century and that sound. And when a tenor, if there are any tenors in the room, know that when you perform some of these darker, heavier sounds and you're learning to do them, quite often there are some mishaps that sound a bit unfortunate, let's say, and will lead us to sing directly into a falsetto, what we consider a falsetto. And that sound reinforced the idea that, oh, they must have been using falsetto when they did that. Well, we know how to do that, so just forget it. But in fact, no.
It's there, it can be found. Now, Puritani, this is an Italian opera, but it was written for the Parisian stage, for a Parisian audience, but it's set in England. Many bel canto operas are, if you know lots of others, particularly Walter Scott's text was a bit of foundation. There's a lot of set in England, but there is an interesting connection anyway between bel canto and England and British. So can you tell us a little bit more about that relationship between bel canto and Britain?
Yeah, I was quite surprised myself to find out the depth to which bel canto is British. Not just speaking of the Donizetti operas, Lucia, which is based on Scott's Bride of Lammermoor, plus vicariously Il Castello di Kenilworth, which is based on Scott's Kenilworth. We've then got the Tudor series by Donizetti. We have, you know, there's several. Rossini's Elisabetta Regina d'Inghilterra. So there was this interest in Britain as a culture, which had, interestingly, had Italians writing and singing British history back to British people. But bel canto was enormously popular in Britain. It was driving enormous salaries for singers. It was, as you mentioned, the puritani quartet of Grisi, Rubini, Tamburini, and La Bloche. They were commanding entire seasons in London. The Royal Italian Opera and King's Theatre, Haymarket, were competing for singers. And when the quartet moved over here, they took on Jenny Lind, which then became one of the most famous sopranos in the world. So bel canto was this enormously influential British product, really, because it was all about money. But it did remain predominantly in the upper middle classes. And so there was a distinction between popular opera in English or in ballad operas, which were a more local art form that included much more speaking, much more acting, and then the imported Italian high art. So there was a point at which that became a very important element in that changeover. So bel canto, being associated with this kind of refined delicacy, very old tradition, was being supplanted by this immediate emotive music that was taking over Europe and Britain and creating and emphasizing that separation between classes. And it was supplanted by this amazing new art form. It then slipped away, but it didn't disappear. It was institutionalized within the music academies. It became the fundamental way in which British singing was taught. Manuel Garcia, the great pedagogue, taught at the Royal Academy of Music for 45 years, from 1848 to 1895. He was the son of the famous tenor. And he said that he was codifying his father's techniques, and those techniques became the canon upon which music was taught in Britain. And it still is today.
Thank you, Ken. I'm sure we could keep talking about all this kind of context that surrounds it. I think that's all we've got time for, I'm afraid. But I want to say a huge thank you to you. Thank you for joining us and giving us that context. Thank you. Now, it's time to, I think, having heard a little bit about that context, it's very much time to hear from the cast. So I'd like to welcome who we've got coming next. I cannot find my cards at all. So I am going to try and remember off the top of my head who we've got joining us. We've got Lisette Oropeza, we've Francesco De Moro, Marcelo Hall, and Andrei Folonchik. Thank you so much for joining me, especially as I know you have had a full day of rehearsals and are up bright and early for some more rehearsals tomorrow, so I appreciate you coming. Now, Lisette, I'd like to start with you. You are singing the character of Elvira, a role that is becoming something of a signature following acclaimed performances, Paris, New York. I know you've recorded it as well. You are now bringing this character to life here at Covent Garden, and I am wondering what first drew you to Elvira and what keeps bringing you back to her.
Thank you. I very much appreciate it. And of course, I'm delighted to be able to sing this incredible role in this incredible opera house. It's a huge privilege for me. You know, Elvira, I puritani in general, as you all know, doesn't get presented very often. It certainly hasn't been presented in a long time at the Met. It hadn't been presented for over 50 years. And I think here it hasn't been presented for 30 or some odd years. And I think that speaks for itself. You know, it's a role that I've always wanted to sing. I've always dreamed of singing. I used to always audition with it, you know, in the hopes that I would have a chance to do it someday. But big bel canto pieces like this, I think, are the kind of pieces that you really have to do when the planets align, you know, because it's not a chestnut the way La Bohème or La Traviata is a chestnut. It's a very, it requires very specific singers in their prime. And I feel like with bel canto, when you're young and fresh, you're not ready for it to be a vehicle for you in a major house. But if you wait too long, then you're not young and fresh anymore. So it's like it has to happen at the right time. You know, the planets really have to align, not just for the audiences in the opera houses who've been waiting decades to hear the repertoire, but for for all of the singers to be in a place that's appropriate. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Francesco, it's wonderful to have you with us now. We heard a little bit earlier about Arturo has some of the most demanding vocal writing in the repertoire. But can you tell us about the man? Who is Arturo and what, what drives his actions in this opera?
Sorry, I have a special translator for me.
Il ruolo di Arturo è molto acuto, si è parlato già abbastanza di questo. Ci può dire un po' del personaggio di Arturo?
Il personaggio è, insomma, la storia è abbastanza semplice alla fine perché io non riesco ad avere la mia Elvira e insomma, me la portano via al primo atto, scappo dai miei seguaci, trovo la mia regina che è prigioniera e cerco di liberarla. Quindi la storia che è abbastanza banale, se vogliamo così. Il personaggio invece, quello che canta Arturo, è molto complicato. Ci sono chiaramente delle parti molto conosciute. Inizia subito con una esplosione, con una Teocara, che insomma è molto famosa e c'è subito questo re che devi piantare così dal nulla. Certamente il pubblico, tutti ti aspettano di lì queste interpretazioni molto difficili, ma è comunque il bel canto è un mio repertorio, perciò è nelle mie corde e è un piacere di poterle cantare queste cose.
So he said that, yes. So he said the story for Arturo in I Puritani is actually quite simple, almost banal, because banal. How would you even say banale? Banal, banal. And that Arturo, yes, he's not able to be with Elvira. He ends up getting taken away because he escapes with his queen. You know, he's a royalist and he's loyal to his queen, which is Enriqueta. Once he finds out that she's being imprisoned, he goes to save her from being killed. And so he's not able to have the happy ending with Elvira. And so he said, however, vocally, the real challenge is the vocal things that Arturo has to sing, because he has some of the most famous moments in the opera that people are waiting for. In particular, he mentioned Arturo's entrance aria, in which he has to sing a really, really high note, pretty much right on, obviously, his last arias. Also, he has to sing a crazy high note that everyone waits for. But he just said that, yes, that in general, that he's got it in his chords now and his voice now, and that he feels very privileged to be able to do it here.
Thank you, Francesco. And Lizette. Thank you.
I got you.
Thank you.
Now, Andre, can I turn to you? You are the character of Riccardo, and he may be seen as the rival in this love triangle, but kind of not in other ways. Also, at various points in the opera, he could turn into the villain, but he doesn't. And actually, you get some of the most passionate music. Can you basically tell me a little bit about Riccardo and what interests you about him as a character?
Yes, so we should start that it's a typical baritone role, baritone in love with soprano. Then in his way stands the tenor with the high notes and even higher in this example. And yeah, the most beautiful music I think in the opera. Everybody shares some, of course. It's Bellini, so it has to be. But it's a very complex and complicated role. As you said, that he doesn't turn villain in the end. We will see. I don't want to do any spoiler alerts, but Richard Jones, of course, prepares some kind of surprise. In every scene, I think, we do a classical version of this piece, but with a beautiful ideas to keep the audience alive and interested in freshness in this piece. Vocally, it's written perfectly for a young lyrical baritone. As every bel canto, it's demanding. Donizetti, Bellini, Rossini, they had fantastic singers during that times in 19th century, ending of the 19th century. They had unbelievable voices and big talents, so it's really demanding for every singer. And but through this music, he can really portray all of these emotions. I think that this is the most important, that we want to show the audience through the music that we feel something and we go through some situations in our lives. Riccardo is a former soldier, I mean, current general, and so I think in this piece we want to show him as somebody who is driven by love, but doesn't know how to show it because of his experience on the battlefield.
That's the thing with him.
Very much.
Marcella, now to you. You are Enriqueta, and her presence has enormous consequences for the story, even though she occupies a very different place in it and in the drama to our central lovers. Now, can you tell us what her role is in the drama and how you establish her character quickly and vividly?
Yeah, Enriqueta, actually, it is kind of a small role, sort to say, but she actually, just like you said, she has a big importance to the story, because actually she is kind of trying to run away from her fate, and Arturo finds her in a very difficult situation when she's already been held captive, and she thinks her life is over, and suddenly she meets with a royalist. So she's like, maybe I can still be saved. And of course, in the part of like thinking about it psychologically, you don't want to die. You want to live. You always want to find a way to live. At the same time, she sees that this man who is loyal to her will lose the love of his life if he saves her. So there is a moment when she is also very much in question with herself of like, I want to be saved, I want to live, but I don't want this man that has such true intentions to lose all the opportunities in his life to be with the love of his life. So it is quite a challenging situation, and to portray it in a very fast period of music, but beautiful, beautiful music. And I think you all will see it on the 30th of June, that we have managed to do it in a very nice way.
Oh, there you go, whetting the appetite. Lisette, back to you if I can, about Elvira. She is one of the great bel canto heroines, and she's a role that demands really quite extreme vocal virtuosity, but also emotional vulnerability. She's very young, you know, that's the thing. Now, she does lose her grasp rather famously on reality following Arturo's departure, and that is this operatic mad scene centered on Act 2, but it sort of starts at the end of Act 1 and goes into Act 3. So it's a really extended period of the opera. Now, when preparing the role, how have you approached her psychological journey, and how do you avoid her sort of becoming an operatic archetype?
That's a wonderful question. I think mad scenes, or madness as it's portrayed on stage, can easily fall into the kind of running around senselessly, you know, blood all over the place, just messiness. And what I love about Elvira's text when she is singing a mad scene is it's rather precise. It's just specific things that she sees, that she describes. Nothing is vague. Everything is clear. And I think that's the key to playing psychological breakdown, is that you have moments of extreme clarity that only you see as clear. Everybody else doesn't see it. That's what makes it mad. It's not that, oh, I'm just seeing visions of colors. It's not. It's very specific things. So I feel like when you stick to specificity, in general, in all theater, but in particular when you're playing a character who's not making sense to everyone else, I think that reads a lot more strongly. And Richard, in our process, has been very good about being, I mean, even when I have a moment where I'm supposed to be talking to a person that is not there, he'll have someone come and stand there, an actor stand there just for the rehearsal so that I get used to talking to a person that isn't there to help keep me from being all over the place and bring me into focus, which I think is very helpful.
Yeah, so it's been a really sort of valuable collaboration actually in terms of with Richard and how he's helped you with the role, even though you've sung it before. It's changed over time. That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's given a lot.
Yeah. Francesco, then, to you. Now, it's full of characters, this opera is pulled between personal desire and political duty, and that's very much exemplified by your role and Enriqueta. Now, do you see the story as a love story or something else?
Allora, il personaggio ha le diverse cose, ha la scena, l'amore, la passione e l'amore anche ha il dovere della politica. Tu lo vedi come una storia di amore o una storia di un eroe amoroso o poi la vedi?
Entrambe due. Sì, c'è la politica, c'è la
both.
regina che va salvata e comunque c'è l'amore che ho per te, quindi sono entrambe delle due cose che si portano avanti durante l'opera.
Yeah, he feels like it's really both. It's very much for Arturo in
E
particular.
quella è la difficoltà poi nell'interpretare il ruolo, perché in certi momenti devi essere tutte e due, è difficile.
Yeah, he says that's the issue with
Caratterialmente.
Yeah, characteristically, that he has to play this dichotomy of political honor, duty that's expected of him, but also the love story that
Molte
he has.
volte devo nascondere a lei questa storia che ho nel salvare la regina.
Because he also has to keep from Elvira. He doesn't communicate to her that he's involved in this political mess that
È
he
questo
has.
che poi porta al dramma.
And this is what actually drives the story forward. Yeah.
It's almost one of those where, I mean, destiny drives a lot of these characters, which is quite interesting, isn't it, in how that works. Now, we're running out of time, I'm afraid to say. So I'm going to ask a general question and go down the line, if that's all right. Okay. So for anyone coming to a Puritani, who they're coming for the first time, what would you encourage them to listen for or look out for in this opera?
A qualunque persona che viene a vedere Puritani, cosa diresti che loro devono avere come focus?
Intanto di aprire il cuore, perché la musica il bel canto il focus è la musica, il focus è tutto quello che è dalla prima nota all'ultima, perché è pura bellezza.
He says focus on the music from the beginning, from the first note to the last note. It's just pure
il focus
beauty.
è nel nome, bel canto.
Bel canto, just focus on the name itself. It's beautiful singing.
Marcella?
Yeah, I think it will be really beautiful. One of the most beautiful things that we have is to be able to watch art, music live, and to have this connection between the public and ourselves. And I think it will be a night of a lot of emotions that we are going to go through. It's going to be beautiful.
Andre?
Oh, I agree. When you look at the lineup, you can easily see that it will be a bel canto, because we have the best of the best here for this musical. And the director is fantastic. And really, I worked with Richard Jones during his La Bohème, and I was amazed how much he works with the music actually, and how the actions on stage are related to the music, which helps us and turns a performance into some kind of a dance. And really, I think the audience can see it, that we have fun and we enjoy it, and everything is connected so beautifully that the action flows, and it's very easy to watch it and to have fun as an audience.
Lastly, Lisette, final word?
I agree with all my colleagues. I think that the music speaks very much for itself, but we do have a beautiful production that's got a lot of thought and detail put into it. Not a lot of broad strokes. We're really putting a lot of details into every scene so that even if you don't know what's going on musically, you can see it as well. Like, it's very much, there's not a lot left to the imagination. I think we're really going for it.
There we go. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining me. We can't wait for it on stage, and we wish you all the best for your upcoming performances.
Thank you.
Now, we've spent some time learning about the characters at Bellini's opera, and very usefully, lots of the cast there talked about the production, and it is to the production and the creative process behind this new production that we turn. How does the staging develop in rehearsal? How do performers, creatives, and technical experts work together to build the world of an opera? Joining me now are some of the team working on this production. We have movement director Sarah Fay and assistant director Deborah Cohen. Thank you so much. Thank you. So Deborah and Sarah, it's lovely to have you with us because, again, I know you've had a very busy day in rehearsals and again tomorrow, all the way until the end of the month. So Sarah, I'd like to start with you, if that's all right. You're movement director on this production, and I know you've worked on many operas and you've worked very closely with Richard Jones before. What drew you to I Puritani?
A phone call. I'm a freelance artist, and I've been working with Richard on and off for about 20 years, but we both collaborate with other people, lots of other people as well. And he asked me whether I was free and would like to do it. And I said, yes, I would love to do it. But I was quite nervous about working on I Puritani because I find it hard sometimes to get into bel canto just because often it's so virtuosic technically to sing that often it's hard for me to really be able to get into the fabric of a narrative and a story, and often the narrative and the theatre of it becomes second place to the singing, which is so extraordinary. And I wasn't sure how much we were going to be able to dig into the narrative because I listened to lots of recordings and it seemed like an incredibly virtuosic piece. But actually, we're working with such extraordinary singers that they're completely on top of the technicality of the singing. And I don't think I've ever felt so excited in a rehearsal room. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here right now. I had this moment last week where I was actually sitting on the floor and there were 60 chorus. It was the end of Act 1. And all the principals kind of about this far away from me. And they were singing like the finale. It's just after Arturo has escaped with Enriqueta. And Elvira is wondering where Arturo is. And it's such exciting music. It's completely over the top. It's like being at the fireworks. And it was such an incredible like wall of sound, but you could hear all the detail as well. And that's down to the skill of how Richard has arranged the staging, of Ricardo, the conductor, of everything that kind of makes something happen. But my whole body was kind of vibrating and I was completely in the story. And I thought this is about as good as it gets in terms of visceral, total theatre. So I'm very happy to be working on I Puritani, but it kind of scared me to start off with.
A fantastic answer, and I'm itching to see it now. Deborah, you're an assistant director on this production. It's a role that can mean many different things in opera. What does your work look like day to day? Can you give us a hint of what it's like during the rehearsal period we're in now?
Yeah, well, there's actually two of us, so Ollie Platt and myself. And we sort of divvy up the jobs, and one of us will sit next to Richard and take notes for him throughout rehearsals. He gives a lot of notes from the start. And then the other one will make sure we get all the blocking down in our scores so that when we revisit a scene, we know exactly what's happening. Also, so that when we get to stage, when we're doing technical rehearsals, we don't have the singers present at that stage, so we need to make sure we know where they're standing for the lighting and things like that. But also, for me, I'm going to be doing the cover rehearsals, so I've got to make sure that I know what Richard wants. So that's one side of it. And then we've got the scheduling. Which is always a juggle, and we're trying to do it in quite short space of time. And we often have to change things up day to day, depending where we've got to. But Ollie and I are trying to get into Richard's head and think ahead, think where maybe he's going to be each day. We spent a lot of time trying to get into Sarah and Richard's heads, which we've clearly done, because we ended up doing this today.
This wasn't planned.
Yeah, no, it really wasn't planned. So that's another thing. And then just liaising with different departments, making sure that costume are aware of things going on in rehearsal rooms, like rags and hair and things like that we suddenly have to make them aware of, or a quick change that was maybe not planned. I think just making sure that everyone's on top of it.
So across every detail, but also noting down every detail. I mean, that's the thing when you look at often look at scores that have been used by directors. I mean, it's just full of text. You can hardly see the music because it's you making notes, you know, those kind of things. So
I've got like one page where you've got hearts representing chorus, and then letters representing the actors, and then numbers representing all the singers, and it's, we've got to make it clear for someone else to read it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Sarah now, Bellini's opera is often discussed, and you've talked about it, the vocal brilliance is you know, the first thing that stands out. But when you're creating a production like this, it was also about finding a theatrical language. So where did the process begin on this staging, and were there certain themes really that emerged very early on?
I guess so. I mean, we'd had a research and development period of a week that Deb and Ollie also came to, where Richard and I and Deb and Ollie and stage management, and even Hemi, our designer, and Nikki came to visit, I think, as well. And we played all the characters. And it's about kind of getting inside the trajectory of every character line through the story, understanding spatially how best to tell the story. I also tried reading a bit of Walter Scott, which I found quite difficult, but then I spoke to a really good friend who'd read all his books and explained some things to me more clearly. So like the whole Gothic romance of Civil War, of an Italian's idea of Gothic England whilst living, or a Gothic idea of another period in England whilst living in Paris. I mean, there are so many ingredients in the opera. It's trying to please a Parisian audience. It's got disguise, it's got madness. So madness is really interesting in this period as well. It feels sometimes in the opera, it's so kind of queasy and queer and mysterious. It feels like something that you can catch like COVID. It's kind of pre-Freud, the idea of it is pre-Freud, but it's also basically about a people fighting against itself, civil war, where you don't have any reliable leaders. In fact, Volton, who's the father of Elvira, and if you like, the owner of the place where everything takes place, he's kind of gotten out of the way very quickly. And in our production, he's given over his castle to be requisitioned as a fortress, so it's kind of run by soldiers. And actually the most alpha person around really is Riccardo, who's a scary military man, and he has been promised Elvira's as his bride, as if Elvira was property. But you know, there's civil war. It's the people fighting itself. It's the body fighting itself. So madness is like an autoimmune disease, if you like. Nothing makes sense. Leadership doesn't make sense. It's kind of a bit like this moment in history. Like it's everything that you don't know what you're standing on. And I feel like I've forgotten your question.
No,
but
you've given a fabulous answer.
Okay, right.
You've touched on so much there about the historical context, as well as how you're approaching it. Actually, I'd like to pick up on a little bit about that. And actually, since you talked about the madness aspect, I think we should get into that, because it's one of the challenges of this opera, really, isn't it? I mean, you've hinted at that. It's a convention, but also contemporary productions, as you've hinted at, you know, try and ask something different often about this. So is there a danger of Elvira being the sort of quintessential mad heroine, and what complexities have you explored? I don't know whether, Deborah, maybe you want to start, and then we can talk about the movement side. Deborah?
I think maybe Sarah.
Sarah, that's fine, that's absolutely fine. Sarah, about how have you approached it?
Actually, Lisette, I heard Lisette speak about this. It's about specificity. I mean, madness is just being very intense and seeing or feeling things that other people don't experience or feel. And for example, in a lot of the libretto, it talks as if it kind of describes moments where it really feels like Elvira is having an out-of-body experience. She stood and she saw herself in a white wedding dress walk off into the distance with Arturo, and very genuinely she thought, well, is that me? Is that me walking off, or am I here? So she starts not really understanding where she is in relation to her own body. And in terms of depicting madness, it's often about getting Lisette to imagine Elvira seeing a very specific Arturo somewhere else and being able to speak to him. And when he even comes in the flesh for real behind her, she doesn't know whether what she's seeing is someone who is really Arturo or another, phantom. But the piece is mad anyway. I mean, it's mad that Ricardo, who's a villain, and he is sort of a villain, because no one should be considered, no human being as property. But he's played by all the rules. He's done everything that he's been asked to. He's fought for his country. If kind of leadership has been kind of changing, it's very confusing. And he was really successful on the battlefield. He's celebrated. He's been promised that after giving his life, sacrificing everything in order to protect the people, that he will have a wife and family. He didn't grow up with lots of property, and he wasn't able to read novels and things. He's worked all his life, and so he thinks it's absolutely right that it's fair that Elvira should be his, and it's tragic. He's in our production. He does end up being a bit of a villain, but he is a villain, but he also is trying to play by the rules, and the rules don't work. Similarly, Arturo is an innocent, really. His dad has been executed. He's lost everything that was his ground. He has always loved the girl that's lived probably locally. They've grown up together. They've always thought that they would end up together as soulmates. And suddenly he's being told that he doesn't have any access to her and that he's not allowed to marry her because she's been promised to someone else. And then when the father actually can't bear the idea that his daughter's going to die if she has to marry the soldier, and finally agrees, okay, well, let's marry them. If I can't please Parliament, at least I might save my daughter's life. And they're able to get married, and then suddenly Arturo is given this choice. I can marry the love of my life, and things might settle in Plymouth anyway, because the royalists here and the army might be able to sort of get along side by side. But then he's given the choice that the person, his dad, who died trying to fight the cause for, that the Queen of England, or the ex-Queen of England, whose husband's been executed, is about to be executed too, and he morally doesn't feel like he can stand by. And he goes from being an innocent to being kind of pulled to an extreme, like lots of characters in Walter Scott novels do, where the hero, if you like, is not meaning to be a hero. He's just pulled into a situation where suddenly he has to deal with nuance and complexity and all the really messy, terrible stuff of being a human that is kind of unresolvable. And you're in all these forces, like the force of a Bellini opera, yes, which is completely kind of messy and crazy, yeah, and beautiful and mysterious. But nothing can be this. He can never go back to that innocence, and that's Sorry, I talked too much again.
No, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's brilliant, and really getting into the complexity. I think that gives us a hint of what's happening in the rehearsal, yeah, process. The fact that how you're thinking about the characters, I think, is yeah, really revealing about what's happening in those rooms that we don't normally get to see. Deborah, I do want to ask you about. We've talked a lot actually so far about Bencanto in terms of its musical aspect, but theatrical opportunities. We're getting a hint of those. What for you are some of the highlights and challenges of this particular opera in dramatic terms?
I think we've talked about all these firework notes that come out in the musical lines, and I think that's sort of the challenge for Richard and Sarah, to not... Richard always talks about keeping the ball in the air for the storyline to keep the audience interested, and if that ball drops, we might just feel like we're just watching a lovely concert. So it's keeping the drama alive amongst the amazing vocal lines. And I think Sarah and Richard have done something very clever with the use of the actors to really help tell the story amongst those beautiful arias. And they're really enhancing what we're hearing, the pictures that they're creating.
Yeah, we have 10 actors who are wonderful. And in fact, one of them, Bridget, came up to me the other day and she said, this opera is a bit like the equivalent of fan fiction. I don't know if you know what it is, but like all your kind of favourite bits of things, or favourite bits of what opera can do, or favourite bits of what characters can do, and mashing them all together. Yeah, that's it.
Great. I mean, one of the Richard Jones things is this kind of human behaviour, isn't it? It's very people-focused. It's who are these people, what's driving them, what's the wider, so we're going to get a bit of that. Which leads me to my last question a little bit, which is, having worked on this production as it develops, what are you particularly excited for audiences to experience when they see it? Deborah?
This amazing cast, just everyone involved in, I mean, it's a really exciting piece, it's a really exciting production, and it's not been done for 35 years, so it's exciting that it's happening here, and yeah.
Sarah?
And I would just say the same thing. It's a very, I'd say, queer piece, and yeah, the singing is out of this world. It's so exciting, and I really hope you all get to see it and enjoy it as much as we're enjoying it in the rehearsal room. We feel very privileged being so close to it. It's really something being, this far away where you can feel it so viscerally through your body.
Because there's all those solo arias, there's all these ensembles, there's a huge chorus, we've got actors, so it's going to be a spectacle as well, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Deborah, and I wish you all the very best as you continue your rehearsals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, it's been wonderful to hear how the production is taking shape in the rehearsal room, but of course, everything begins with Bellini's score, and we've been lots and lots of hinting around what's going on in that score. So I'll be joined shortly by conductor Riccardo Frizza, who will walk us through some of the highlights of I Puritani. But first, to give us a taste of the music, I'm really delighted to welcome tenor Jihoon Sun, who will be singing Arturo's Act 1 aria, A Te O Cara, and he's accompanied by chief repetiteur Richard Fu. thank you there to Jihoon, and thank you to Richard, who I know is staying with us, so we've got a bit of a treat with that. It gives you a taste of what's coming up in the opera. That is but one of many arias of that kind of style. There's a lot to look forward to. And actually, I think it's worth us now digging into that music. So please welcome conductor Riccardo Fritza. It's lovely. Thank you for joining me, Riccardo. And I think congratulations are in order, because this is going to be your Royal Opera House debut, is it not?
Oh, yes.
There we go. But you are no stranger to Bellini, and you are no stranger to I Puritani. I know you've recorded it before. So what draws you to this particular opera and Bellini's music time and time again?
Well, I Puritani, in my opinion, is the most important bel canto opera. And there are so many reasons. Composer, at the beginning of the 19th century, they're trying to focus on the mental illness. If you consider also Donizetti explored it, and Bellini wrote 2 operas about it. So, but what is it is in Puritani is the great master of Bellini playing between lyricism and drama. So how he drives the play and using all the politics thing, the law things, the medicine things. So these 3 big contents all together, very balanced in between, with big balance in between this. This is fantastic, probably. And of course, the most beautiful melodies, have you just listened at Teokara, maybe harmonically, under the music point of view, is simple. But this simplicity is indeed necessary to display these beautiful long tensions. So I'm always amazed when do I Puritani. It's very difficult opera to prepare, because you need the best singers on the market altogether, and there are not so many, believe me, able to sing I Puritani as intended to be performed. So we are very lucky to be here in London to do that.
On that point, actually, just as thinking a little bit about the rehearsals then, when you are preparing roles like Elvira, Arturo, Riccardo, with artists of the caliber of Lisette and Francesco, what is your focus then with them?
Well, I have to say that we did recording with Lisette, so I was able to work with her and prepare this role. But she's a great artist, so she arrived that she already, really deep in the music, but not just that, in the character and in the psychology of the character. That is very important. This, but also Francesco De Muro did his debut in Puritani with me in 2000, I don't know where, 16, 17 in Budapest. It was in a semi-stage performance. So I was able to work with him very, very strong, because he's a great tenor, of course, a great Italian voice, very displayed voice. I would say 40, so really out voice. And so we really built up the role as I intended. It bites my way to intend the role, so I'm very happy. And so now I can mix them, so Lisette and Francesco. Really, what we are doing is exactly what I really want to do. Because sometimes, bel canto is really complicated to sing. It's a very technically demanding. So you have also to try to go behind the singers, because every singer is different. They cannot do all the same things. So you have to engage with the throat. So the larynx is unique. Any singer has his own larynx. So bel canto is also the way to build up, considering the capacity and the ability of the singers, and stay in the style. So it's many things to do, especially in a production like this. Richard Jones' production is, I have to say, probably the best I've seen so far. So it's very well done, and very work in the details that for me is very important. Puritani and this kind of composer they're working on the mental illness before Freud. So the way they were seeing this illness is totally different as we see today. And that is really very interesting, because now, in our day, we know that it's something of the brain, there is something really inside the body, but at that time, was really some exterior. They just look at the exterior, the medicine was something of the body, not of the brain. So put all these things together is not easy, but it's very interesting.
So, shall we get a little bit into getting into the score, I think, now? And one of the things that I know we had a chat about before, actually, is how quickly Bellini sets the scene. So we are in Plymouth, of all places. We are, during the English Civil War, and there are lots of kind of aspects about how Bellini writes this music, where he's scene setting. And I wondered, because we've got Richard on the piano, perhaps whether you could talk us through a little bit of the ways that right from that opening, we get that.
In my opinion, yes, but we have many different opinions. Modern musicologists, they think that Bellini is not interested in to put the geographic location, so England in this case, but he wants that to go right away in the drama. This is partly true, but at the beginning we have this opening with this accord, vertical accord, that in my opinion, you can imagine like a sword fighting, jump, 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 sword in a battle. And right away, we have the hunting horns. This is typically, something British. So I think in few bars, we are directly in Great Britain. So, and afterwards come the drama, and after, we have the emotional location. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you can just play
a little bit of this,
yeah. Yeah, and after we can go to another section to the horns. It's in few bars, 30 seconds, we are already here.
Yes, you've got that military right from the start. And
yes.
Those horns, there's that kind of gives a slightly sort of rural, isolated. I mean, to me, I hear it and I go, a little bit of Mendelssohn even in there,
Exactly.
This romantic sound.
If we can go also to the Baroque music.
Yeah.
Parcel, for example. Yeah, so it's typically British in my opinion. Yeah. And but we go right away in the drama.
Yeah, so it's very evocative, the score, and I want to get to the orchestra a little bit later on, actually. Yeah. But there's a big aspect of this is the public and the private, because a lot of this story is very personal and very private. But there's also this element of these big set pieces, the chorus are very present. So how does Bellini approach those sort of two worlds?
Yeah, for him it was necessary in order to tell the story. Maybe he wasn't very interested in the political aspect, but it was in the novel, of course, in the text. But the balance of the three things is very interesting, and exactly some of the tutti scene. So they all together on the stage, they are particularly meticulous. We have not to forget that he wrote this opera for Paris, and Paris, at the time, around the 30s and the 40s, was maybe the major opera house in the world, with the best orchestra in the world, with the best instruments in the world. Because there's another aspect that nobody talks about it, but is the transformation of the orchestra during this period. If we go to the first, for example, the first British environment opera by Donizetti, the Elizabeth and the Castle of Kenilworth, we are in around 1826, 1827, something like that. And the orchestra in Italy, in Naples, was particularly Baroque or classical, like a Mozart orchestra, if intending the period instrument orchestra. But during the 30s and the 40s, the woodwinds was really, they had a big transformation. So clarinets, oboe, flutes. So they were able to play every note with a lot of agility that wasn't able at the time. So Bellini, in this case, is writing a very, very peculiar things in the orchestra, and the orchestration is very, very refined in some way, more than Norma, for example. It's always matter of battles, but this is a different level of orchestration. Many details, especially in the fortes, forzato, accent. There's so many accents in this score. That's really unbelievable.
And this was, I mean, he was very consciously writing rich orchestration because he wanted to appeal to this Paris audience and what the audiences at the Teatro Italien wanted.
Of course, the taste of the Parisian audience was totally different than the Napoli, for example, Naples audience. And, but also the orchestration, the sound of the orchestra sound totally different than the previous opera. I take Norma because it's one of the most famous. Let me give you an example. We translate this on the piano repertoire. Probably Norma we can consider like a Brahms sonata. And Bellini we can consider, Puritani we consider like a Chopin music. We have a different level. He wants to really fly a little bit more higher. Norma is very deep. It's very in the battlefield, but really deep in the Roman Empire, so very consistent. Norma is floating. The music of Norma is floating. So the pianissimos in Puritani are really, really amazing as a taste of orchestration, especially the strings. Yeah, I like it.
I think, I mean, and a lot of these kind of really special effects come in Act 2 in particular. Yes. So let's get into the mad scene, really. I think you've talked about this particular scene really being the sort of essence, the summit of Bellini's art. And I know that we perhaps might be able to get some examples as well. So can you talk us through how he approaches this mad scene?
Yes, but also for Act 1, I will be back. In Act 1, after this opening, we have a prayer with the organ, with an organ. Because in the Paris opera, there was an organ. So you want to use it, of course, so we have a prayer. And second act, there is probably one of the most beautiful scenes, that is the Elvira's aria. And it's going to showcase, in some way, his ability to go from the lyrical part, very introspective part of Elvira, to the madness. So it changed the polarity. We're now not bipolar people. Because in some way, she's bipolar more than the mad, in my opinion. Because she's gone from sad moment to happy moment in right away, and after she go deep in the depression. So we have these three moments very well localized in the score, in the second act, in the Elvira aria. So this is like a monologue. And after the music right away is changing for a few bars. No, continue until the next section, because it's important to no, before exactly. So do the 6/4/8 go into there. So now we stop in the middle, but if you connect the three things together, so we have the monologue at the beginning with a beautiful display of the melody, and after the festa, so the moment of the wedding party, and after suddenly she go in the big depression. This is the technique that Bellini used to display the illness.
Yeah, and that wedding music, that's a recall, that's her reminiscing, isn't it?
Exactly.
So we heard that in Act 1, and then it comes back.
Yes,
so,
because always we say that Wagner invented the leitmotif. It is not true. But Wagner took it from Bellini. The first is, no, that is history
Well, he
of
loves
music.
Bellini.
Yeah,
he really
exactly.
loved Bellini. Wagner
In
did.
fact, the only composer that was really appreciating was Bellini.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's wonderful letters if you're interested in.
And these kind of melodies and musical moments, they repeat a lot, during the opera. And this tickles, reminding the melodies. This is one of the aspects why it's a great opera and the audience love it a lot, because they can go home and they can sing it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's another reason why we do the cabaletta twice, because repeating the melody. For example, if you go to the end of the finale, second finale, Suoni la tromba.
Yes, I was going to ask you about this. So just to prep this then, it's a big political moment. It's the end of Act 2. We've had an awful lot of Elvira. And then we get this great duet. So ensembles are a very big feature of this opera. There's wonderful ensembles, big quartet in Act 1 and things like that. But this is the end of Act 2. It gets political, very political, but it's a hell of a tune. Can you introduce what we're going to hear?
Yeah, this is a duet, and it's the end of finale 2, yeah? But you should know that in the Bellini intention, the opera was just divided in 2 acts. So this wasn't originally the end of the act. But Rossini asked him to do it, because exactly for your reason he said, it's a big political moment, and the melody is very, very fast and very heroic, whatever. And if you close, at the end, you close the curtain, you get a great explosion by the audience, and you gain the success of the night. So Bellini was pleased to follow the Rossini's suggestions in some way, and especially because Suoni la tromba intrepido, this melody, the beginning, in some ways reminded La Marseillaise. There was the battle of the French Revolution. So Parisian was very proud about that. Etc.
There you go. It's with the 2 male voices as well, these low male voices.
Exactly.
It's a thrilling moment,
yes.
to end it on. I think, unfortunately, we have to end our talk now, even though I know we could keep going for a lot longer. So I want to say a huge thank you to Riccardo and Richard. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. So you can stay sitting with me.
You finished?
You can stay. I know. We're wrapping up. We're wrapping up. So we're wrapping up, so you can stay with me for this. So tonight's Insight may be coming to a close, but you can catch Richard Jones's new production of I Puritani, conducted by Riccardo Fritzer, here at the Royal Opera House from the 30th of June. You can find tickets on our website. A huge thank you to all of our guests this evening. A thank you to all of you here in the Claw studio, as well as everyone watching online. We hope you've enjoyed this Insight, supported by Rolex. Good night.